G Show, Peter G Show. Divorced dad, single dad, divorced dad, single dad. Peter G Show.
Hey everybody, it's that time again. I'm Peter G, your host. You're listening and watching the Peter G Show. Greatest divorce and single parenting guy show, period. Or the only show, period. I don't see a whole lot of people talking about it, and that's why I do it. I am deep in the heart of Pensacola, Florida, the Gulf Coast. I love the Gulf Coast. Those of you who pay attention, if anybody pays attention, you know I talk this place up a lot. I grew up here. I love spending time here. The beaches are beautiful. The people are beautiful. I like it. So I come down here quite a bit, and I'm very thankful for everything I have down here. And I utilize the place a lot too, because I know a lot of people and I get to talk to people, and that's kind of how this whole thing started. Today, however, we are going to go above and beyond the call of professionalism. We're not going to talk to your average person off the street going through hell. We are not going to talk to a doctor or a psychologist today. We are going to talk to, wait for it, a lawyer. Ooh. Love them or hate them, you have to have them. And today I want to introduce my new friend, Miss Jill Warren. How you doing?
Good.
You're good. Yeah, we just talked a second ago, and we just, she's a little quiet. You're a soft-spoken attorney. Or are you an animal in court?
Yes.
Okay. Here's why I asked you to come on. A lot of people, I know this is going to be shocking, but a lot of people don't like attorneys. You know what I mean?
I do.
But on the other hand, you have to have them. If you were, nobody's twisting their arm to call you, correct?
Correct.
Tell me what kind of practice you have.
I have a family law practice and some appellate work.
And some what kind of work?
Appellate work.
Okay. How long have you been practicing for?
Almost 15 years in October.
Okay. Would you say the family practice is, I guess, mostly divorce?
Yeah. Mostly divorce, relocations, and modifications.
Of?
Time-sharing agreements.
The kids?
Mm-hmm. Or child support.
Okay, I can relate. But it all starts from the beginning, divorce. Yeah. Now, again, I don't care why anybody got divorced. We're done with all that crap. But my main concern, that I explained to you a little bit earlier, which they all know, is surviving the divorce. I've seen a few amicable ones, but not very many. Otherwise, you'd be out of a job.
Yes.
But the hate and the anger of the person that you loved, that you married, and then you bring children into the world. It doesn't always work out that way, and how quickly we forget when you're fighting a war. So they come to you. You handle a lot of males, females, 50-50. What do you think you do?
Probably 50-50.
50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Because you as a woman, and this is why I'm bringing in a woman. And again, ladies, quit giving me hell about it's the one-sided man thing. Pay attention. They really give me, just because I'm a guy, they thought the interviews were all going to be, about the men. Because a lot of men really think they get shortchanged. And a lot of guys probably do. But I've also learned, and I am the result of one who got the even Steven. I managed to have people in my life that I didn't know, strangers. When you come to a woman like this or an attorney like this, you're basically saying, I can't handle my life and now somebody else has to. And you get what you get. I have found, tell me if I'm wrong, you go before a judge and in 15 to 30 minutes, he's going to rule your life.
I think it takes longer than that.
Okay.
But to listen, to rule 15, 20 minutes maybe, to listen to all the facts.
Do they, and do they really listen? Or have they gotten so numb sometimes that it's just, okay, but the thing is, you're expecting somebody, you're nervous as hell when you go to court, at least I was. I know you do it every day. You're airing out your dirty laundry. So let's back it up. So you say you have men and women. I've been fortunate, but when I went before a woman mediator, I thought I was going to be a cooked goose, because I just figured, as a man, you just figure she's going to take my wife's side. And she didn't. She saw right through her, and she was very, very, this is the way it should be. Yes. Okay, so you sit here. I don't know if I would hire a female attorney, but now I've learned after going through it, there are some really great female attorneys, but as a man, I would think I want a man. I just saw a billboard on Pensacola that said the father's rights attorney, you know, but tell me about yourself.
I've been practicing for 15 years, went to Loyola, practiced in New Orleans and practiced in Manhattan, and now moved back here around 2007. And I've been practicing here ever since, mostly doing family law, probably since about 2008.
But when somebody comes to you, I mean, and I don't know if they're your average person, you high-end attorney? I mean, high-end, like doctors, lawyers, I mean,
I have them all come through here.
Okay, so you get them all.
Doctors and lawyers.
So money's not really the issue of like, I mean, it's an issue. They have
Money is always the issue.
Okay, okay, let me take that back. But it's emotional.
It is emotional.
And when you have kids involved.
Yes.
Are you married?
No.
You have kids?
I do have 2 kids.
Divorced or just never married?
Divorced.
I wouldn't want to be married to a divorce lawyer.
Well, when we married, I wasn't a divorce lawyer.
Okay, because I mean, I thought about that when I was coming up. I'm going, that's kind of funny. I go, because that's one way to stay married is to marry a divorce attorney, because you'll never want to get divorced.
Or get a prenup.
Well, do they really work? I mean, does it really make it that much easier?
Not with kids.
No, the kids. Let's go back to the kids. So you get a lot of people, male and or female, and they have kids. That's majority of the time?
Yes, most of the people here have kids
Okay.
that I see fight. I maybe have 1 or 2 cases where there aren't any kids involved.
Right, and much easier because it's like goodbye, quick, you know, maybe they made a mistake. But when you brought kids into the world, normally they're a few years old, if not semi-grown, and it gets complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So do you feel is like some of the biggest concerns of the people that are in here besides alimony? I mean, is there any emotional like things that really tears you that you go, wow, I can't, you know, this is what I see so much?
So what do I see? I see parents sometimes who come in and they've not been very involved, but now they want to be more. They're getting divorced, so now they want to be more involved.
Right.
And you know,
truly, or they just all wound up because of the fight?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't
Okay.
know. I
get
believe
it.
what they tell me and what they can show me, but
Right.
you know, I do find that parent, you know, male or female these days,
I
because there's
know.
a lot of traveling females that come in and women who, you know, aren't around a lot, and the dad
Right.
has picked up the slack. But so gender aside, that they've come in and they'll say, you know, when I'm home, I do 50% of the work, but you're only home 25% of the time. So
Right.
25% of the time you're home, you're doing 50% of the work. And then the other side is up in arms because he's only home 20% of the time doing 50% of the work. So why should he have 50% of the time overall? And that's hard to explain. And, you know, my other concern is that a lot of people spend a lot of money fighting the good fight. And what I think you asked me if the judges listen. And one of the things I tell people is that there's a spectrum of parenting. There's the high end, you know, you do everything right, or what is perceived to be right up here, and then there's the lazier parents who have a more laid back attitude about parenting, and you know, which one is right, I don't know. The judges don't either. What they do know, and what I tend to find, is as long as you're not falling off that spectrum of parenting, it's not that they have a deaf ear about it, but they're not as big as if you'd fallen off the spectrum over here and done something very terrible. Then they're gonna listen, and they're gonna take action, and they're gonna do things about it. If you come in and you say, you know, he's a terrible dad, he gives her Lucky Charms for, you know, breakfast every morning, and I give her Cheerios, I don't know why she should be there. You know, I don't know that they listen a whole lot to that. I mean, they hear it, you know, because you're in front of them, but
Right.
I don't know that, you know,
Well, that's the
parents
thing.
are caught up emotionally, and they don't understand that it's significant to them, for sure. But in the scheme of things,
Do you get a lot of phone calls in between the divorce, like, you know, oh my God, you know, and I know because I got a bill every time I called,
Yes.
but to me, it was the most important thing in the world. And you know, 10 minutes, there goes 10 minutes of $400 an hour. And do you get a lot of that? These people just pouring their hearts out because you got to listen because, oh my God, he did this or she did that?
yes,
All hours or during business hours, or how's that
all
work?
hours.
How do you relate to that? I mean, what do you say to, like,
We try to get back to them especially if they're having high anxiety about it, get back to them as quickly as we can to kind of try to quash the anxiety. Lots of times there's not a whole lot I can do. I mean, if you're calling your lawyer with an emergency, I mean, sometimes if it's really an emergency, you hang up the phone and you call 911.
Right.
Or if it's truly a child emergency, you hang up the phone and you call Department of Children and Families. I am involved in a system where it is a process. So if you call me and you say you have an emergency, I'm going to probably direct you to one of those other two options, and then I'm going to tell you about the process that I can do so that we end up in a place where you want to be, given the emergency you're having now. But there's not a lot I can do when there's an emergency on the table.
What's the average time span that you feel with your clients' divorce? I feel it can be 2 months, 6 months, 2 years, 4 years. What's yours? Mine took 2.5 years.
Yeah, it depends.
Of hell.
What it depends on that I've noticed is that how resolute a person is. When they come in and they say, I want this and I'm willing to give on this, and here are the things that are sticking points for me, and here are the things that I would really love to have, but I don't have to have them, I can live without them. And
Right.
so once I know those things, then we can start. I know what to ask the other side for as far as proof. I know what to do. But if you come in and you say, this week, it is very important to me that the kids are with me the majority of the time, and he only gets them every other weekend because for whatever reason he's off that spectrum of parenting and he shouldn't have 50% of the time. But then you come in the next week and you say, oh, we had a great weekend, and I think he could have 50% of the time. Then I have to rethink where we're going with things. And obviously when they go from every other weekend to I can share 50-50, that's a lot less work for me, because everybody starts with an A these
It's where it
days.
should be.
Everybody starts with 50-50 is the thought.
That'd be nice.
I don't know that that's the law in Florida, but I think everybody starts off even-keeled with 50-50 time sharing, unless you can show why that shouldn't be the case.
Okay, that's good to know, because again, I was expecting to get reamed, honestly, because my ex, when I was given 50-50, she had a conniption fit. Because not that she wanted to take it all, but she just felt our daughter was too young, too small, blah, blah, blah. I'm a good father. I mean, that's why I did this show. I mean, I gave up everything to be her father. I stopped traveling. But I feel that the fight, the anger, is like a driving force with a lot of people. And you fight the fight, but then once the fight is over, will you hold up to the expectations that you were fighting for? Right. And that's a problem. Do you see a lot of that? Do they come back after the fact? And
Yes.
Men or women?
Both.
Both. You got some crappy mothers? I mean, there are.
I have some crappy mothers.
Got crappy guys, crappy mothers. I mean, and I'm all about the good ones. The good ones are the only ones watching this.
Wow. I think that a lot of people don't hold up their end of the bargain, but in all fairness, they're not really given a chance to take it for a test run. You've got to get in and you've got to fight the fight and pick a position, so you're not spending a lot of money on attorney's fees. Then you pick your position and you've kind of got to stick with it. Then let's say you win the position that you've picked, and now you have your child 50% of the time, and maybe you didn't before, but you're really happy now that you've got him or her.
It's work.
And then you get in, and some people are, oh my goodness, I have him 50% of the time now, and that's a lot of work. I didn't realize it would be.
When you're working and you're single, this is why we're doing this. It's not about the fight so much, but it's how you survive. Okay, you got this, but I wanted to get into the mechanics of you're surviving, because while this is going on, you're still managing your child, and you're out of your house normally. I was, and my daughter, it's like, how do you work when you're a single parent? Get them to school, especially if you have multiples. You know what I'm talking about, because you're one, right? Okay.
You get a laptop and you do it at night.
You're probably a little more fortunate, maybe because you have a business of your own and you can schedule but you still kind of have to be here certain hours, and there's probably times when you're in a rut. Do you have family that helps? I found that a lot of families have to step in and put up with all, not put up, they'll gladly do it, but I mean, it takes a village to raise the kids, because I've got retired parents that are taking care of their grandchildren and stuff, because there's, great grandchildren, because the grandson is divorced, and all walks of life. When you get these people in here and have you had, it's emotional, okay? Do they sit right here and just, have you had the moments where, they're just losing it and you need to get them together?
I find that there's just a lot of frustration with, I feel like lots of times my clients, and I think where I come from as a firm, is I try to encourage my clients to be reasonable. If there's reasonableness to be had. And I think where it comes in is, you've told me to do this. I've tried to do the right thing. I've shared the child when I couldn't have the child, and now the other side is not doing what I'm doing. And so, but you've told me to be reasonable, and you've told me to do all these things that are the right thing to do. And I think there's a lot of frustration when one side is trying to be very reasonable, and the other side is still staying the course, where it's an adversarial.
The key word I learned is what you just said multiple times: reasonable. That word was used a lot when I was going through it.
Reasonable will
or
save
unreasonable.
a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, again, after the fact, when you look at all this and you say, God, if you, instead of spending the 70 grand you just spent, or the 30,000 or the 5,000, that could have gone to your kids. Easier said than done, my dear. Because when you're angry, and see, with me, I was always just being called, I was ex parte'd so much, I mean, I knew the security guards' names. You know what I mean? They saw me every other month, and every time I walked into a courtroom, it was $4,000, from the depositions or the declarations. I mean, I learned all this stuff which I wish I never knew. But I had to go answer, because every month she was trying to prove me as not being the dad that I claimed to be, so she can have a little more custody. Never got an inch after almost 3 years, because I am the dad, I mean, but the problem was it ended up costing a lot of money. And my attorney said, keep wearing the white hat. I was sick of wearing the white hat.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Because you just want, and even to this day, and again, I love the woman, and I'm just saying this because now we got to have a little joke, but I married her, and I always saw the good, but it just didn't work. And and even to this day, I'm 8 years into my relationship, out of my relationship. She still needs a surgery that she refuses to get, and that's that stick that's up her butt that needs to be removed, because she's still pissed off, Yeah, it's okay. I mean, but because I want to be done. It's like, you got to get, for my daughter's sake, for the kids' sake, for your kids' sake. It's like, I'm not asking. There are some people that do hang out with each other after they're divorced, because you got to remember there was a time when you loved these people. And your kids, it'd be so much better for my daughter if I was able. Thank God my daughter kind of works she's the middle person, and you don't want to drag your kids in the middle, but she's a little bit different. But when you're in court and you're representing one side, and then you have another attorney representing the other side, because let's face it, and let me tell you again, the reason that this woman is in here today is because, as many of you that don't like attorneys, I felt that she was one of the ones that isn't going to sit there and wait until you're out of money before she finishes what she's doing. I truly felt, through my research of getting to people that knew her, that she wants to get you in there for your best interest. Yes, you called her, but she doesn't have to milk you dry until you're done. She's got plenty of business that'll keep her going. And but there are a lot of attorneys. My ex had an attorney that was just kept her riled up until, finally after 2.5 years, they finally decided to call it quits. And that's wrong. And that's what gives, unfortunately, your end of your profession. But again, you have good and bad everything. You could only hope, and that's why I'm featuring her, that you find a good one that is in here because you came to her and she's looking after your best interest. But if she sees something wrong, even on your end, that, okay, you're nuts, that she'd be honest enough to tell you, you're nuts.
Well, yes.
Okay.
For one, but I think people have to know their options too. I think that if you come in, you say, this is the problem, and then it's my job with you as my client to come in and say, well, this is the problem, here are your options. We can file, a motion for temporary relief. Or if it's not that important that we have to try to deal with it before the final hearing, we can deal with it at the final hearing. This route costs you an extra however many $1,000s, depending on the evidence we have to get. This route, we're still staying the course, but we'll address that issue when we stay the course. So you pick. And I don't know, obviously I am just one attorney. I don't sit in with other attorneys to hear them say. I don't know if they give that, but we do that here. This will cost you.
I get it, but when they come in, it's like, we're going to take them for everything she or he's got. It's like, but that's what, but people get in people's ears. Correct? And to get them all riled up. And then by the time they get to you, it's like, yeah, go see her. She's, going to stick it to best interest of the children. I can't say that enough, because again, I know we're forgetting, but the kids are the repercussions. It's trickling down, the anger at the house, all of that. Do they ever bring their kids in with you? Oh, and they come here?
They have, but we reschedule if that happens.
We do. I'm
I
sorry.
reschedule if that happens.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't do kid meetings.
You don't make them sit outside or anything? Okay, because it's hard.
Yeah, no.
It's hard.
It's not an appropriate place.
I had to go to family, counseling and things. California Lutheran University, where they videotaped us. I mean, we're like 6 years of trial case study. Funny but true.
Yeah.
Because if you would, and I know they're using because it was that difficult, and that's why I sit here, because I survived it. But a lot of people, it changed me.
Yeah, kids shouldn't come in. My experience is that the judges, unless there's no other way to get the evidence, they don't want to see the kids.
They don't want to see the kids? No. Have you had the point where you have recommended family counseling and things like that?
Yes.
And does it work?
I don't know.
You don't see them afterwards?
Usually I'm out of it. Usually,
by then?
Yeah, usually, what's one of those things where they're starting it as I'm ending what I'm doing.
Because, see, again, I ended up going, but, when you got somebody that's unreasonable, I had to fight every time we'd come to Pensacola for how many days I could come here. And, it was just unreasonable. Again, it's like you can't come here for 5 days. It's a day travel each way. And what do you do for 3 days? And we had to go to mediation. And then all of a sudden the mediator becomes the professional. And whatever he says is kind of gold, too. If they send a letter of recommendation and it goes to you and it goes to the judge, they're going to side with that recommendation.
Well, we do things a little bit different, maybe. Our mediators don't make recommendations.
Your mediator, but what about like professional family counselors or therapists?
Can. Yes, they can.
Yeah. I mean, again, you got somebody judging you, and it's the he said, she said. He sucks, we suck, and you hope that the experience they can read between the lines, but sometimes it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
You don't know who's telling the truth.
I don't sometimes.
Right. Have you had cases that you've regretted?
No, not really.
Really?
There have been cases that have been very difficult while they have been pending, just taxing on my time and my emotions as much as on that person's. But I feel, maybe during the turmoil of it, I've thought, this is a lot of work. Right. There are other cases that could be a lot easier. But I usually like where we end up when it's all over. I feel like it's a process. And so when they come in, they're kind of heightened and emotional, and lots of times they don't know what to expect. And if you do a good job of telling them that expectation's not reasonable, here's what you can expect within, this, then okay, we've shifted our expectations, we move on to the next thing. And, while you're explaining these things, you go through, each one has its a little emotional turmoil because they may not like what their, options are, what the likely outcome is. But they've heard it, they know what to expect. By the time they get to court, they've heard it. And so when a judge says it, it's not the first time that they've heard that is a likely outcome. So while there have been times where I've thought, oh, this is hard, and this is stressing me out, and this is taxing, you usually end up someplace where nobody is surprised.
Right.
And all of them are, the judges have to follow the law. Everything's within the realm of possibility. And as a lawyer, if you do a good job of saying, here's what you've told me, here's what we know they might say, here are the outcomes based on these two things, then, you land somewhere in between there. And so I don't.
I just hate the whole process. I mean, to me, standing before a judge in a court, and there's a whole bunch of people behind you in a courtroom, and you're just talking about all your crap in your life. I mean, and none of it's any good, because that's all you bring. You're bringing all your artillery to the court. He's this, and nobody says, oh, he's a stand-up fine gentleman or a fine woman, and honored. It's not like that in a courtroom. It's nothing but the bad stuff.
Oh, but sometimes, I guess I'm lucky in that I get to pick and choose which cases I take. So if I meet with someone and I'm not real excited about the facts of where they're coming from, I don't have to take that case. But I have found that people will sit in my office and they will say, I want to do this, or I want to argue this position because, all of these terrible things are going on, or I'm hearing all of these terrible things are going on. Okay,
with
fine.
The kids, or?
Yeah, with the kids, or, whatever, really,
Okay.
just any issue.
Okay.
And then we get to court and ask the question, like, is so-and-so a good mom or dad? Oh, yes, I'm not saying they're not a good mom or dad. And I think, well, now we filed all these pleadings where I've said they're not a good mom or dad. And you told me in my office 15 times that they are not a good mom or dad. But now I put you on the stand in front of the judge, and now we're really reasonable. And,
Okay.
I think that, to me, it's nice to see it. And I hope that when a person changes their position that they've really had some kind of turning point.
Sure.
But quite often we end up, stepping down and, talking about, okay, well, you told me all these things in my office, and in court you said they were a really good mom or a really good dad.
Remember.
Which is wonderful if they are, but if they're not, you've got to tell the judge what you told me, because I can't tell the judge what you told me. You have to tell the judge that.
And that's, again, I found having an attorney, I didn't get to speak very much or at all. My attorney spoke for me. And then at the very end, I had to let my attorney go, because at a certain capping point, I had to tap out. Mm-hmm. And then nobody knows my life like I know my life. Right. And I got to speak for myself. And honestly, it's the if I knew then what I know now, because yes, I needed representation, because I hate the administrative part of divorce. It's very complicated to me, and I don't like filing and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, if I could do it over again, which I pray that I'll never have to do it over again, it would have been the very end, when it came down to just settling just finishing up. The beginning, because my case was all just accusations. He's this. I go to court, I'm not that. He did this. I go to court, I didn't do that. I've literally had to have subpoenaed the police because I was followed. She was having me followed, and I had my daughter on Father's Day, and the cops came at some place where I was at. And I've said this story a few times, but it was life-changing. It was so embarrassing. But the bottom line is, the cops, I had to bring them in, the officer, and it's like, no, he was fine. And even in therapy, I've had the therapist say, I don't think, because my ex a lot of parents would say the child's having issues because of this. Well, it's the parent having the issues. It really isn't the child, it's more the parent having the issue.
Or how do you know that if the child is having an issue, how do you know where the
That's
issue
the
is
problem.
coming from?
Ex parte, because they don't know any better, and I was going to court like crazy, and her attorney was just no problem. He was making his car payments, and mine, he just had to answer. And he goes, well, how do you feel? And I go, what do you mean, how do I feel? He goes, well, we're winning. I go, are we really winning? I don't feel like I'm winning.
Yeah, nobody wins.
No, nobody wins. You've heard that right here from the attorney. Nobody wins.
Nobody wins. In fact...
But you do have a purpose, and you need to be here, and that's why you are here. And when you do get an attorney, it's just like getting a plumber or getting a doctor or anything else. You hope you get a good one, because there's good and bad everything. Majority, I'd like to say, are good, but remember, you just need to do your homework a little, get references, just as she's on this show today, because I had references. She said she was honorable, and that means a lot to me, because like to think that I'm an honorable father, and that's why I do this show, because I'm not talking to, if I help one person that's kind of twisted on this show, I'm doing good, but most of the people that are watching this are because they need this. Yeah. I don't give advice, we just tell stories and get to hear from experienced people. Not me, I'm just the dumbass in the seat, to asking questions, but coming from your experience, you've been doing this for a long time. You've sat in that courtroom, you're well acclimated in a courtroom, whereas me, I was sweating like, I just don't like being there. That's not the kind of stage I would like to perform on.
Right.
If you had any advice, like if you could say anything to the people who are like on the verge of going through this, who are going through it, things that you find most valuable lesson, if you look into that, Karen, what would you say?
Be reasonable. Treat the other person like you would want to be treated, because everything comes full circle. There are times when they're going to ask for more days and you're not going to want to give them. There's going to come time, depending on how old your child is, there's going to come times when you're probably going to have to ask for the same favor. And, hopefully everybody can be reasonable and work it out. Because I know that's the last thing that I want to be paid money to do, is to go to court and say, Judge, this is silly. He wanted a day and a half on Christmas break. Crap. And, so be reasonable. You save yourself a lot of money. You probably go on a couple nice vacations, or if you don't want to be reasonable, you can come see me and put my kids through college, and I'll go on vacation. And I tell people that all the time. We have this offer, we have this, and it's not real different. It's not everything that you're asking for, but we can litigate this, and it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to litigate it, or you can kind of say, well, it's not that bad, and you take the money you to spend on me to litigate it, or other costs, and
it's emotional.
Take your kids to Disney World.
So you can have the vacation packages, sort of. You could have either you go on vacation or you pay me enough and I go on vacation.
I say that a lot.
Good. You know, that's actually a pretty,
I say that a lot.
that's very, how do you put, layman terms. Right. Because I don't like all the lawyer and doctor terminology. And when sometimes if you could just relay the message properly, because again, when you're in that frame of mind, you can't think straight. I can't tell you. I mean, I've gotten to the point and to where I was so frustrated. I'd be walking in a store and then my mouth would start moving and I'm talking out loud. And then I'd catch myself because your head is spinning, because your world is going upside down. You know, you're getting ready to walk away from half of the stuff you own or your children more than anything. I walked away. He looked at me and said, you got to decide what you want to fight about. And you know what? I didn't want to fight about anything, but I had this child for a reason. And you know, I love my daughter and I hope that these people do too. And it's not just a fight. I gave up a lot of stuff to make sure I'm at everything I could possibly be at for my daughter. And it's working. She knows it, and I don't need a pat on the back. I just want to raise a decent human being. You know, it's a tough world out there, and that's why we do this show again. It's about your kids and you keeping your act together because you had the kids, and you got married, and that's what the judge looked at me and I thought it was a crappy wrap up of the whole thing. But what do you tell a judge when he looks at you and says, Mr. Gisellas, I understand this and I understand that. Because I was trying to, at the end, I was pissed that she was dragging me into court so much and getting away with it. Mm-hmm. She was getting slaps on the wrist, and it had been me, I just felt that they would have been locking me up. You know, you've seen it. Okay, but again, there's pro-women and pro-men. And he says, but he looks at me and he says, but I didn't tell you who to marry, and I didn't tell you who to have a baby with. And I wanted to just say, that is the crappiest reason you're telling me. But how do you say that to a judge? You know, he'll just destroy you. Mm-hmm. You can't.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
You should probably say that to your lawyer either. I say, I've had talks with people who are, upset about the process or what's happening, and I didn't create the problem. I didn't tell them who to marry.
Don't give me that reason.
I'm just here to help you through it.
I understand, but if you had told me, look, I didn't tell you to marry her. No. Come on, that I mean, give me a better, you know what I mean? Well. I just felt that was the bud. Now again, I know you guys go in the back afterwards and discuss things on your own because you were all lawyers at one point, even the judge, and I get that too. But that was a crappy reason, and it bugged me to this day, and I'll never forget it. But you can't, I want to say that's bullshit.
I think a lot of judges say that.
I'm sorry?
I think a lot of judges say that. Right after they say, you two are going to have to deal with this child for the next however many years, and you need to learn to get along.
The get along part is okay, but he was just like, because I was asking, for her to bear some of this responsibility, financial responsibility, and that's where I truly felt that her lawyer could walk to the courthouse. He was that close, and and I just felt like, okay, this is where the buddy system's kicking in. And again, I know, we all know it's just there's a lot of give and take in this business, and a lot of understanding, and they probably went to school together, whatever. I did well. It's okay.
Their comment on those remarks.
Okay, I know, but I can say that.
You can say that.
I can say that. But that's where it's very aggravating because I do feel there are some men that get shortchanged in again, and more so than women because it really was, I've heard women say, well, we gave birth to these children, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of good dads out there. And there's a lot of crappy dads out there, but not as many. I mean, I think it's a different world now. It's not like the 50s when I don't think my father ever changed a diaper. You know what I mean? But I mean, honestly.
Right. Well, I think one of the good things about a case taking 2 years to pend, we have an order that goes into effect immediately, gives each parent equal time sharing with the child, and usually by the time, the case begins to the time where it ends, I don't know if they can see what's going to work.
You're telling me that in Florida,
in Escambia County, and Santa Rosa County,
okay, that just no matter what, unless it's an issue of like abuse or something like that, they're going to automatically be given 50-50.
Yes.
Well, then how come the father's rights guy is like bitching about father's rights? Why are the fathers bitching?
Because that's only temporary. So there's still a final hearing where parties will come in and try to show either that's a great idea, we should keep 50-50, or, if you're fighting about it, one party thinks it's still not a great idea.
It's a great start, though, because I didn't even think that would happen. That's possible. Mm-hmm. Well, that's better. It's not like that everywhere.
No.
I mean, because I had a buddy who was in LA County. I'm in Ventura County, California, and he got sweetheart of a guy, 2 twin little girls that he adored. and he had got shafted royally. Not even married, but he just, I don't know why, but he's one of those guys that did not do well. And he's not a hothead. It's just the he said, she said baloney, and he's been paying the price dearly for several years now. His daughters are 11 too, also. And he just now got to a point where he can take them out of state to see his mother in Ohio. And I felt for him.
I think that's an issue for, maybe a longer talk, but I think that one thing that people don't realize, whether it's because they've done it on their own the first time around or they just didn't get a chance to talk to their lawyer about it, but I see a lot of people for modification cases, and they come in and they'll say, well, my old lawyer told me that, when I wanted to change it, it's easy. You just come in and you ask for a modification. Or, I did it myself and I thought, well, I could just come in and change it when I want to. Well, you have additional hurdles when you want to change things. And so that sounds like, how you were saying near the end, you get all these little loose ends that you just need to tie up and make small decisions. They don't seem like big decisions. But sometimes if they're not well thought through, you can make a couple bad little decisions at the end when you're trying to tie things up about itineraries and notice and going out of state and things like how to communicate with the child and when you can communicate with the child. And if you don't pay close attention to some of those things, you can end up like him in a situation where I've had to fight now to, it's thrown in there as maybe a little bit.
You go into court though and your head is spinning and you forget.
It's not fair. That's why you have a lawyer.
I know. But even then, I've had the point where they go, well, we're not here to discuss that today. This was about this.
Right.
Nitpicking, anyway. We can go on and on and on. And maybe I hope we will next time. But for right now, again, I want to remind you guys, Miss Jill Warren, Pensacola, Florida. She's a family law attorney here and was highly recommended, and that's why I'm sitting here with her. So I hope none of you guys, have to go through it. But if you are going through it and you want to go through it fairly, or at least somebody who's going to, work for you and not just worry about, how long you could be here for, I highly recommend that you come and see her because she's reasonable.
Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you.
The key word, yes.
I do want to thank you for doing this. She was a little shy, okay? And I could tell that she was a little shy, but then once we got going, I knew that we were going to be doing really well, and I truly, truly appreciate this. I hope this will give us the opportunity that sometime in the future, maybe I'll get to see you again and we'll do some other pieces because, again, it's an ongoing... The one thing for everybody who's healing from all this, there's 17 more coming through the door. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but it's the way it is, and that's why I think I'll probably never run out of material.
I don't think you will either.
And you have kids yourself, right?
I do.
Yeah. And would you say 8 and
10?
8 and 10. Boy, girl?
Both boys.
Both boys. Oh, sorry. I wanted a boy so bad, and when I got a little girl, it just it didn't matter. And she does everything with me. But boys, are they rowdy?
They are.
That's
fun.
what I started seeing.
Active.
Little boys. Yeah, they can't sit still.
No.
Okay. Well, and so what grade are they in? 4th, 5th? 4th?
5th and 3rd.
5th and 3rd. Okay. Well, you got some work still cut out ahead of you, and
and a ways to go.
Wow. Well, so far so good, though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Again, I thank you so much for being on my show. I told you it was going to be a little bit heavy, but it wasn't going to be super heavy. We cry, but laughing's a lot easier than crying. I get sick of crying. Yeah. But anyway. All right, I hope you guys got something out of this because, again, between doctors and regular people and musicians, I have no prejudice as to whoever's going to be on this show. It's like I'm just trying to pass on information to you guys. So I hope you guys are watching the Peter G Show, your Facebooks, your YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, the podcast. Don't forget the iTunes podcast because that's when you can listen to it and not have to actually be home to watch it. You can listen to it in the car or while you're at work. A lot of good information. Hope it helps you guys. And don't forget to pass it on because I know that there's people in your life that need this kind of stuff. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job either. So, so it all works out. All right. Check you guys next time. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Peter G Show.